Hello and welcome back to another edition of Press Pass on GNAT-TV. I'm Andrew McKeever. Today is Monday, September 22nd, and it's a real pleasure to have in the studio with us today Cherise Forbes, who is the editor of the Manchester Journal and Bennington Banner, I guess the regional editor, would that be the correct way to put it?
Yeah.
And Michael Albans, who is a reporter for both the Banner and the Journal. He covers the law enforcement and crime beat, I guess, pretty much, along with a few other things as well, of course.
Right.
I want to thank you both for joining us and making the time for this conversation, which I think is going to be an extremely interesting one for all of us. We're going to talk today about your coverage of the ICE raid that took place in Manchester not quite a month ago, I guess. August 25th, I believe, was the date when the Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents showed up unexpectedly in the neighborhood of Torrey Knoll. And took into custody one or possibly two women who were then taken to a detention facility up in Vermont, and as best we know, one of them is now in Michigan. But it was an amazing story that you both collaborated on and worked together on. It's amazing on several levels, but your writing and your reporting and coverage of it, I thought, was really outstanding. I'm sure when New Year's Eve rolls around and you start thinking about what were the top 10 stories of the year, that's going to make the list. I think probably the top 5 at least. But anyway, I just wanted to, kind of discuss with you how you worked on that story, how you put it together. So to kind of get us started, Cherise, maybe we'll turn to you first. How did you first learn about the event and what happened after that?
Yeah, this was a situation where news tips really helped us lay the groundwork for a story. We received a lot of information that Monday evening that the raid had happened in Torrey Knoll from neighbors and people who had witnessed it unfolding. And that's a great sign of trust in our community that they're willing to reach out to us and share what they've seen with us and ask us for help in explaining the situation. So the next day, on Tuesday, after we got those tips Monday night, we began to look into it and see if we could really verify that it had happened. In the past, we had gotten tips of a similar nature and really couldn't corroborate anything. So in this case, Mike did a great job of being our boots on the ground, talking to the community, and we kind of pieced things together from there.
So once you got that started out, Mike, what did you go up there in person to interview people who were in the neighborhood, or how did it work?
Right. It was very kind of boots on the ground, talking old school journalism, knocking on doors, stopping people when they're walking their dog. And Cherise was right. We had a couple of situations the prior week that people had called in, I thought I saw a whole bunch of black cars over by a farm, and we'd pass by and we'd try to talk to people, see if we could reach out and officially, unofficially, and it never panned out. Nobody ever said anything, or nobody let us know if someone was missing or anything like that. So, we went into it with a little bit of trepidation at whether it was real or not. But very early in my trip, the first person I spoke to was someone who saw it from afar and confirmed the vehicles and what he saw. That was further corroborated because I went to every single apartment in the Cedar Knolls and knocked on doors. Some people answered, some people slammed the door, but a lot of people were willing to say something, and some had strong feelings on what was happening. And you start piecing it together. You can't verify anything unless you hear it from at least a couple of people, the same situation, the same amount of vehicles, what had actually physically happened, where it happened, and slowly we started piecing it together. It's very hard and difficult to do it without official cooperation, because then you have the official word, okay, this is what happened, the police, this was the organization. We didn't have that. But what we had was eyewitnesses, and in these kind of situations, that's as important as long as it can be verified. And so we went down that road and started piecing it together, and I went back the next day to see if I could find any more information, and I happened to meet from afar. I saw the a person going into their apartment that I knew it was their apartment, and I knocked on the door, and this gentleman came out, and I said, "You willing to talk about this?" And he said yes, invited me to his house, and then we had the story of the family and what he knew and saw, and he was right in there, and a little child sitting there, and it was firsthand. And of course, the funny thing was we were sitting there talking, chatting, and the phone rings, and it is the woman who was detained calling from a prison upstate Vermont.
This would be Devona Williams?
Yes, and she was willing to talk to me. You know, it was very brief. She was very emotional. It had just happened the day before. You know, everybody was on edge, but we were able to kind of further gauge what had actually physically happened, and where she was, what her health was, where she was going, what she was doing, and what did they say, those agents? Was there any identification? So those were all important facts, and we knew we had something when we
So you felt pretty confident those sources were reliable and you weren't being kind of misled in some way?
It's reporter instinct, but you can't just take someone's word for it. You can't even usually take two people's word for it. But when 3 or 4 people say pretty much the same thing and witness at the same time, same vehicles, then you could kind of start piecing that together. And sometimes little details are wrong, sometimes bigger details are wrong, but overall, I think that's what our job is, to kind of piece this stuff together, because there are going to be times, especially nowadays, where you're not going to have an official press release, or you're not going to have a police department to call and say, hey, what happened, and they're going to talk to you, like we do locally. But, you know, even though those aren't parts of these stories, we still have to try and get out word as best we can what's happening in our community.
Did you get any sense as to why those 2 people, or if it was 2 people involved? Because I know there's some question, I guess, about if there a second person.
Right.
We do know there's definitely
Right.
the one lady there. Why they were the ones that ICE agents came after and not somebody else? I mean,
it's a little tricky because the way this works is today someone can call and, for lack of a better term, rat out somebody that they suspect, a neighbor, someone that works with, someone that has a beef with you, which is unfortunate, you know, but it's just what's happening. I believe that she had a open case for a while out there, and there wasn't a full resolution, and she was working and starting to, you know, raise her family and paying taxes and doing everything correctly, hoping to reopen her case at that point, this happened to be the time where whatever happened in their department to kind of facilitate going after her, that's what happened. She's a Jamaican immigrant, and she was working for a healthcare organization, a local healthcare organization, and you know, I suppose these things are going to happen when the focus is on, you know, showing up and taking people out, regardless of whether they're gang members or drug dealers, or whether they're young moms who are trying to kind of make a living and doing the right thing. But we can't judge that. We have to just tell what's happening.
so Cherise, have you been able to follow up anything further on that once they were taken away? I guess initially to a facility in Vermont, but now over to another facility in Michigan, I believe. I mean, have you been trying to see, well, like, what else is going on? How are they doing now?
Yeah.
What's the next step?
It's a story we plan to keep following, so even when this episode airs, there may be a new installment available to our readers. But as soon as Mike called me and said, you know, people are corroborating this story, we do have something here, I immediately set to work calling everyone I could think of, from our federal delegation, Sanders, Welch, and Ballant, our local representatives, Governor Scott, the Attorney General for Vermont, the ACLU, I could keep going on, as well as our local sources that we've built relationships and trust with over the years, the Manchester Police, the Bennington Police, the Vermont State Police, and the Bennington County Sheriffs. Nobody could verify what had happened.
Nobody even knew that it happened.
Yeah.
Local police, state police sources?
Nobody.
They were out of the loop.
Our local reps had gotten word similar as we had, reports from the community, but they, for the first day or so, were really relying on us for that information as we were tracking it down as well. There was no way to tell. The Department of Corrections is required to log any prisoners who are taken into custody in the state of Vermont. And so there were a few names that we thought might link up with it, but until Mike was able to verify through the trust he built with the sources there in Torrey Knoll, her actual name, we couldn't confirm where she was or anything like that. We tried to reach out to ICE. I've emailed them many times over the last few weeks. But until we had that name, we couldn't verify where she was. And we finally found out she was at Chittenden Regional Correctional Facility up north. So that was sort of the first step in figuring that out. And from there, more information started to trickle in. Our representatives locally linked up with the federal delegation to try to get Devona some help in terms of legal representation. The community did the same for her family, which was wonderful. And we were, probably a week or so later, able to connect with her legal representation, figure out where she had been moved, why, figure out that they had filed a stay of deportation with the immigration court in Boston, to make sure that she's not deported from the United States before she gets the legal proceedings that she is entitled to. Because she was in the midst, as you mentioned, of that legal process of trying to obtain the correct status. So my understanding is that she's still in that North Lake processing facility in Michigan, waiting for the next steps through the courts to see if there will be that legal hearing to see her status and confirm that, or figure out where she goes from there.
That's amazing.
And the human tragedy part of that is that you have a husband, the father, who has to work and has no one really locally to take care of, help with a 17-month-old baby, and was considering, at least that day when I spoke to him, that really horrible decision to send his child back to Jamaica or something to stay with relatives while he tried to work and tried to figure this out with his significant other. And it's just it was a human tragedy. I think that second day, after we got most of the facts done, and even that day, but when you take a step back, you see the human faces and where this goes with people's lives. It becomes a little less of a political football than it does a story of what's happening now in our country, and what the actual toll is to people that are here who, yes, we never hid the fact that at this present moment that she wasn't legal, at least the status wasn't legal as far as the federal government went, but that there's another little story to that, which is that people are also our neighbors and our community members, and they're not, for the most part, at least everything that we've heard, gang members and drug dealers and raping women and all that other stuff. They're mostly hardworking people, and and they're people we live next to. So that part of the story I was proud of, and Cherise really gave me the time and space to kind of play that, because it was an important part of the story as well.
Yeah, I was wondering, what was it like interviewing Nigel Briscoe, I think is the boyfriend's name,
Right.
And the father of the 17-month-old child. I mean, that must have been...
Well, you gotta
tough
remember, it just
conversation.
happened like the day
Yeah,
before.
the day
So the phone's ringing, he's trying to find paperwork, he's trying to, as he's doing that, he's got the phone on his ear, he's looking through paperwork, he's got the baby in one arm. It was just, he looked like he was in a little bit of shock, and it was just a feeling of sadness looking in a little child's face. Mom's gone all of a sudden like that, and the people caught in this situation, and right or wrong legally as far as whatever was happening, they were struggling, and I was glad that he had the courage to talk to me about it, and she did. I mean, sitting from her facility, crying on the phone and letting me know what happened, because she must have felt that it was important to let people know, and we appreciated that. And I'm glad that we did that. But it was a little hectic. But we've been in that situation before. You know, when it's really that kind of news, you can't do that kind of stuff on the phone. You can't do that stuff by hearing from, you know, different people and trying to piece it together at a desk. You got to get out there. And had we not been there that day, we might have never had that opportunity. So that's the old school journalism that really is most important, especially for a community newspaper to get out there and knock
So
on
there was
doors.
no ever any informal announcement from ICE or anyone else. If you hadn't heard about it, it all could have happened, and no one would have been the wiser.
We never got formal confirmation from ICE to this day, but what we did receive once we had Devona's name was confirmation from Chittenden Regional Correctional Facility that she was an ICE detainee.
Right.
So that verified the story that we had put out the day before based on those corroborated stories from community members.
We did hear, right, from email from ICE just asking us a question or something, and then said we'd get back, and then we never heard back.
Yeah,
from
once
them.
Devona was transferred, we got a response from them finally after multiple emails, but that dropped off after a little while too and never got the confirmation that we needed, unfortunately. I'm not sure why that is.
So then you wrote an editorial sort of talking about how you covered the case, and I wondered, what prompted the idea to do that? Had you gotten so much feedback about the story that you felt you needed to explain kind of how you wrote the story and why, or what was the motivation behind that editorial, which I thought was a fascinating read, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah, we were in a unique situation with this story in that we didn't have the formal confirmation the day that we decided to put out the story. And as a community newspaper, as Mike was just saying, I think a big part of that is accountability and trust. That's how we got those tips in the first place, was people trusted us enough. So putting out that story without that official confirmation did raise some eyebrows. And I thought it was important to have a dialogue with our community and explain how we went about the process, just like we just talked about, of boots on the ground, calling every possible source to confirm, and why we decided to provide our readers and our neighbors with that information sooner rather than later, because we trusted what we had heard and because those stories were corroborated. So really explaining the journalistic process behind that, and explaining to them why we decided to take those steps and where we would go from here, I thought was very important to open up that dialogue. Because as you mentioned, we did receive a lot of feedback, a lot of positive feedback from some folks, and a lot of questioning feedback, which they're entitled to. That's a fair point to question our work and how we do it. And when we do it in a way that's maybe off the beaten path, I stand by it, but want to communicate why and how.
I was wondering, did you, in the course of doing this, kind of talk to some other editors
Yes.
that you know, people saying, hey, you know, any advice you have to offer or whatever, or did you just sort of follow your instincts?
Definitely. Every resource that I could rely on, I did. And Mike was a big part of that. He's more experienced as a journalist than I am. So having that dialogue with him of how we should go about things was invaluable. But even, you know, past editors of the Journal, Sue Allen, Greg Zakenik, the editors at the Brattleboro Reformer, our sister paper, and even our broader staff of folks that have worked with us for a long time, having that conversation with them of, are we on the right path? Do you guys feel good about this too? Because I never want to assume that I know it all. I'm still pretty new at this, and I do feel like we handled things the right way, and I'm really glad that we had that support system to lean on along the way as well.
Yeah, I in turn reached out to some of my groggy old comrades in New York, just to kind of just bounce stuff off. Where is the point where we can go public with this? What do we have to confirm in this kind of thing? And so it's nice to have that community of other journalists who have a lot of experience to say, this is what needs to happen or can happen. And so I believe we were, you know, it's always scary taking a chance and taking a step like that, but we still to this day didn't get real confirmation that ICE was there or anything like that. So might have been a story that was buried if we would have waited for all this stuff. But again, I think part of our job is to sometimes, with caution, take a little leap to kind of get to the next step so that we can figure it out. And me and Cherise talked that night, and like, if we both fall on our face, we apologize and we say we were doing the right thing, but it never happened. But if you're not willing to take that chance every once in a while, then I don't think you're doing your job.
So what happens next? I mean, as far as we know, there's one woman in Michigan, but we're not sure about the other one. Is that?
Yeah, so initially some of the reports that came in, well, some of the interviews I had, some people were confused as to whether it was one or two people. A name came up that we published, and two or three people said that they knew her, and that she also, we found out where she worked and stuff like that. They didn't have a last name, but they knew her first name. And in this course of action, when we were trying to confirm everything, we kind of started realizing that there wasn't the confirmation that we felt comfortable with, like we did with Devona, with this other person. And Cherise, wrote in one of the pieces that there still hasn't been confirmation on that second person, and this is part of the process. I wish we were 100% on everything, but we take responsibility and we take it very seriously. But getting some of that stuff out that's not hearsay, that is being confirmed. Witnesses, sometimes see it from 100 yards away, sometimes see it from 50 yards away. Some people can see different things. That's why it's so important to try and talk to as many people as you can, and then get confirmation from the people it actually happened to.
So do you anticipate doing any kind of follow-up as to what her situation is now? I mean, one fact I remember reading in one of the stories was that she struggles with high blood pressure, and there was medication that she wasn't obtaining, I guess, and as quickly or as in the quantities needed. I mean, is there any way to follow up with ICE and say, well, are you going to bring her into court at some point, or is she coming back here? Anything like that we know of?
We are following up with ICE. We won't neglect that source, but we haven't been getting a lot of responsiveness there either. So the sources that have proven more valuable to us have been the relationships that Mike has curated with Devona's family and with the Rutland area NAACP, who have been working closely with them, as well as the relationships that I've built with our state representatives and the legal representation that is handling Devona's case. So we will absolutely stay in touch with those folks. There are tools at our discretion as well, in terms of you can get notifications from the federal system when someone is moved, as long as you have their name and their country of origin. So we're using those tools as well. That's how we knew she had been moved in the first place before pretty much anyone else. And we'll keep tabs on that so that if there is progress in her legal case, we'll hopefully hear that from her legal team. If there's changes with her health or her family situation, we'll hopefully hear that from those sources. So I think it all goes back to building those strong source relationships and building that trust.
And we'll, of course, follow the legal battle
Paper trail.
when and if it happens, so that we follow through if she's ever moved out of the country, if she's released. We'll have all that for people.
Did they ever tell you why she had to be moved to Michigan and couldn't just stay in Chittenden County? I mean, what was the reason for her going?
I think we asked that question and we were stonewalled. You got to understand, these legal things, you can only go so far by providing a platform for people to say, yes, this is why we did this is what happened. But if they're not going to answer you back, there's nothing you can do. But it sometimes feels like, and I do this a lot in the court, you'll talk to your sources and then I'll reach out to a defense attorney or someone else associated, and if they don't get back to you, give them every opportunity, because you want to be fair and even, of course, but it just doesn't happen in the real world like that all the time. And so you put what you have and state that you reached out to X, Y, and Z for a comment or for clarification, and they weren't able to get back to you or didn't get back to you, and so it's just all part of the process, So we're hoping that we one day, the better angels of the ICE hierarchy, have a little more transparency, which is what it was supposed to be in the beginning, but so far we haven't found that to be true.
I keep on wondering, is this a typical way that government agencies like that operate? I mean, as you said, if you're dealing with local law enforcement or state police or county sheriff's office. I mean, my experience anyway has been, you know, it's not that hard to get information, or at least a comment or something. I don't think I ever had the I'm not sure if opportunity is the right word or not, but to deal with federal agencies. But is that typical that they just would say, you know, you just get stonewalled?
I don't think anything's typical right now. I think we're in a different age. I think that we're just seeing the beginnings of a lot of changes on the federal level of how things are done. And I mean, I just read a story in the Times about the well, now Department of War, that if you're a correspondent, that no matter if you get your tip from a source or anything, if it's not officially confirmed, then you can't use that source. And if you do use it, you'll lose your credentials and you won't be able to get into the Pentagon and do your job. So this is unfortunately the new reality, but here's where we can make a difference, even on the local level, on a small level. We can still get boots on the ground, we can still knock on doors, talk to people, reach out to everybody we can, and try to get out the most accurate information we can, regardless of whether a local, state, or federal agency wants you to have that information or not. And that's the most important part, because if you're waiting for an official person sometimes on a story to tell you exactly what happened, you're going to be waiting a long time in a lot of cases.
Mm. And just before we have to run, I mean, do we know how Mr. Briscoe is doing? He's still in his apartment in Toronto,
Right,
and
yeah.
they're still, he's
As
still
far as
working
we
in
know, he's
Rutland
still
and-
there. There was some, I believe, some fundraising done through the NAACP to help the family, and I think it's kind of at this point in the hands of the local attorney or whoever's going to be representing them to find out what the next step is, and I'm sure we'll find that out.
So the story's not over yet, I guess.
No, far from it.
Right. Well, all right. I guess we'll leave it there for today. I want to thank you both again for making the time to come up and talk about this really amazing story that you both did. Cherise Forbes, the managing editor of the Manchester Journal and Bennington Banner, regional editor, excuse me.
No problem.
I always get titles mixed up. And Michael Albans, who is a reporter with the Banner and the Journal, covering law enforcement and court issues. So thank you both again for making the time for this
Thank you.
conversation.
Thank you.
Thanks to all of you who have been with us today. Hope you found the program interesting, and we'll see you again the next time. Thank you very much.